Hi, welcome back to the course. I'm Steve, Senior EV Editor with FindTheBestCarPrice.com, and this is the 5th video in the course where we'll be taking a deeper dive into charging your electric vehicle at home. So as a quick reminder, this course is to help people who are new to electric vehicles or may just be curious about buying, learn more about the topic, more about the transition to EVs, and be confident in going into that first purchase or lease. So we want to give you all the information you need to make that decision confidently. With that in mind, we have a lot of resources over on the website, one of which is what are my options for charging at home. That's a slightly deeper dive with recommendations of home charger and different levels of charging that you might want to consider if you like taking in stuff in the written form. If not, this video will cover most of the things you need to know as well, just on a more surface level so that we run through them fairly quickly, and what you need to know to get set up successfully or have a bridge to more powerful charging when you need it. So let's jump into your options for charging an electric vehicle at home and how to get it set up. So in the previous video to Introduction to Charging, we looked at both AC alternating current and DC direct current charging. For the purposes of this video, as we mostly have at home alternating current, we'll be looking at level 1 charging, which is at that 110, 120 volt level, and level 2 charging, which happens between 220 and 240 volts. And these cover the types of power that you'll have at home most likely. So as a quick reminder, level 1 charging is trickle charging, fairly slow and about 3 to 5 miles per hour. And then level 2 moves up to a wider range of 240 volt charging, which is more like your dryer outlet at home, somewhere between that 30 to 50 amp range from the outlet, and that might be the kind of thing that you have in your garage or your basement that you plug a dryer into. So disregard DC for the moment, we'll need that on the road in the next video, but it's AC where we're at when we sit at home. So let's look at the type of options you have and how you might use them in your home charging for your electric vehicle. So at level 1, we're talking about trickle charging, as we say, so it is 3 to 5 miles per hour and not a whole lot of juice flowing through, but it can serve as a good place to start and get a feel for whether that type of charging will work for you. And it may be something that you need on the road from time to time when you visit relatives, or have something where you can plug into an outlet and just have that cord in your car ready for those opportunity charges. So it's not something to dismiss, and it's worth knowing about. When we look at this level, we're not talking about something that is going to give you a lot of range, but it could suffice for those 30 to 40 miles that you need to add for a daily commute or the regular errands that some people do. When you talk about equipment, we are looking at a very thin range of options. You may well have something that came with the vehicle itself when you buy an EV, where you will get that portable charge cord that will come from the manufacturer of the electric vehicle. A lot of people use this as a kind of bridge to getting faster charging that we'll talk about in a little while here. But if you do have one that came with the vehicle, that makes it very easy, plugging it into an outlet, plugging it into the electric vehicle, and then seeing how much you can get in a given period of time. If the EV does not come with a portable charge cord, then there are plenty of third parties you can buy them from. They tend to be at the low end, $200, $250. That could be something that's on the cheap side. You may not want to go out and buy something that's incredibly expensive when you're talking about something you may be upgrading eventually for faster charging, but something that's from a trusted manufacturer that is UL listed, has an appropriate NEMA rating for insulation if you're going to be using it outside, as sometimes people will. These are the things that matter if you're going to be using this at all, but certainly not something that you would want to break the bank on and then find out you need to spend again on the more powerful charging options that are available at that 240 volt level. So not too many options available at this level, but you can see that if it comes with the vehicle, or if it's something that you may want to just pick up, purchase, and then keep in the trunk or frunk, as some EVs will let you do, you're able to just have that portable carrier, and in a pinch it may get you the energy you need to keep going through the week or bridge the gap to you getting a more powerful 240 volt charging option at home. And before we move on to level 2 charging, 240 volts, which is the bulk of home charging equipment, some vehicles will come with what they call a dual voltage adapter, which will have different pigtails, extra connections that you can plug into the portable charge unit itself, and one will be able to plug into a regular outlet. One will be the option for a 240 volt outlet, maybe an older dryer outlet if you have something that's in the 30 amp range, or one of the newer outlets with NEMA 1450. But with the main point here being that one unit does two jobs. You'll have something that you can carry around in the vehicle, charge on a regular outlet, charge on a 240 volt outlet, and that may in some cases be enough to bridge your charging gaps and get you through what you need for your week when you charge at home. So moving on to level 2 charging at 240 volts, this is where we really start to get to the business end of home charging, because this is a level that is going to be able to refill your vehicle from that low state of charge that people are comfortable getting down to about 10 to 20%, all the way up to that 80 to 90% level that people recommend setting as a cap unless you really need the extra range, because it's often recommended to keep your battery in that middle kind of ground of somewhere between 30 to 70 or 80%. But what we're really looking at here is the equipment that you need to get yourself to that level. So let's take a look at some of the options. You can move up from that level 1 portable charge cable to a level 2, as we say. So a lot of those can be just things that you can put away or just to carry around with you and have the option available all the time. More likely it's going to be a permanent installation at home or something that is more fixed in your home somewhere, but for the sake of starting out, let's look at some of the portable options. These can tend to be on the lower end of the pricing range, so for a charging station you can look anywhere between $350, $400 all the way up to closer to $1,000. It's usually in the hundreds, high hundreds, but it really depends on the features you're looking for and the different levels of power that you might want to go for. But typically you're going to be looking at either the 30 amp kind of range all the way up to about 50 amps. There are more powerful home chargers available, but that level of power is what's going to give you that overnight charge for most EVs. Some of the charging stations that we recommend in the article linked in the description here are around that $400, $500, $600 price point. The difference typically comes down to things like cable length, how many features the unit has, and how durable it is. But for the most part, you want to look for something that is UL listed, has an appropriate IP rating for the use that you're going to have, whether it's indoors or outside, rain, mostly sunshine, all that kind of stuff, and obviously has the level of power that you're going to need to get range back overnight or during the day whenever you can charge. This equipment to charge sometimes may come with your vehicle, but again that's going to be on the lower end of the amperage, is probably going to take a bit longer. So if you want to get something that is truly going to give you that overnight charge and the full benefits of having home charging, then probably something that is from a third party is going to be what you're needing to look for. So you can start out with something that is just a plain dumb charger that has no real extra features on it or app connections, that kind of thing, but just something that will be essentially plugging into your 240 volt outlet and being able to charge the car overnight when you plug in. That's not necessarily going to give you things like measuring how much charge you put into the car, how much energy has been delivered versus how much you get into the vehicle, and your amperage rating, being able to change that. Some of the things that allow people to dial in settings won't be available on these cheaper chargers, but that's okay in some cases. Some people just want a very simple, easy, plug it in and let it go, and that can be a way to get into the home charging game on a relatively affordable level. Moving up, you can get to other chargers that are feature rich, so you have them connected via Wi-Fi, you have dedicated apps that allow you to change some of the settings, from dialing up the power, dialing it down, to scheduling charging, which often can be set in the vehicle as well, but for the sake of having it for other EVs or models where that feature might not be available, it can be nice to work that into your charging equipment. So as you get to this kind of level, you're probably talking closer to $550, $600 and beyond. That's going to give you access to those features that put you in a little more control of your home EV charger. It's also nice if you want to track energy uses, track when and how you've charged, how quickly, so that you optimize your home EV charging. This can be a useful thing to spend a couple of $100 extra on, but get that extra level of features and control. But it's something that you can put on the wall at home or mount in a semi-permanent position near your outlet and get access to those features, but have the charger in a fixed place that gives you that stability of having it always on the wall and connected to the area where you're mostly going to charge your vehicle at home. There are several popular models. Again, we link some of those in the article that I mentioned that's in the description, so go ahead and check that out. We'll update that along the way, so if some of those get discontinued or changed, updated, we can keep that level for you, but know that you're spending in that $600, $700 range at that point to get that home wall-mounted EV charger that gives you some of those more smart features. And then adjacent to the wall-mounted unit, you can also get versions of that will not use the outlet but will hardwire into your panel. This can typically be for pretty permanent situations where you know you're staying in your home. You do not need to use that hardware either to go on the road or to use it as a portable charger for other locations that you might have. And that's perfectly fine as well. It gives you a little more stability of not having to unplug and perhaps replug. Avoids wear and tear on an outlet. If you just want the peace of mind of having it wired once and being done, that can be a way to go as well, using the hardwire unit. That does obviously come, unless you are yourself a qualified electrician, you will need to get the labor in there and factor that installation into your cost. That can run several $100s all the way into the thousands. Really depends on your location and what work is involved. So that's something to quote out, but know that you'll need to factor in some extra budget for that if you do want to hardwire the unit. So before we jump into some of the other considerations, one of the main things to note about your home EV charging setup is safety. There's a wild west out there of all kinds of charging cable providers. It may seem attractive to pick the cheapest up off Amazon. I would urge you to consider that. This is a piece of electrical equipment that is delivering continuous load to your electric vehicle. Even if you set it at a lower amperage, it's going to need to deliver that power in a safe and reliable way. So that's why we recommend getting something that is UL listed. That's one of the safety certifications that comes in the US as a sign that the unit is going to be able to handle the load and subscribe to US electrical code. And also IP rating is another thing that you'll need to look for. There are various levels, and we'll put some of them up on the screen here so you get an idea of what different pieces you'll need to look for. But it very much depends on your application. If this unit for charging is going in your garage and is going to be covered and safe for most of the time, then you really don't need to think too hard about how enclosed it is and protected from the elements. Whereas if it's going to be a unit that's outside and you live in an area where it's going to get rained on, snow, dust, all kinds of things that you don't want in that charging hardware, then that's where the IP rating needs to be a little higher and you have more insulation from that outside use. And here are some of the things that you can consider from a safety perspective as you look for your ideal home charger. So what other questions will you have about charging your electric vehicle at home? Well, the next one that comes after the hardware selection or the type of hardware that you're going to install is how much power do you need, or what amperage do you need, to put it another way. So with this standard NEMA 1450 outlet, you're looking at wanting to have 80% of that power to meet electrical code. So that's a 40 amp load. On some of the older EVs, they will top out at 32 amps. So it's really a decision between how much you want to cater to the EV itself or how much you want to think into the future and maybe allow for a little more power in case you get a model that is going to charge a little faster when you get your next EV, add another EV to the household, or whatever is the case for your charging needs. One of the key things to remember here is that if you're able to get that 8, 10, 12-hour charge overnight or during the day at home when the vehicle's sitting idle, power isn't all that it's cracked up to be. You don't really necessarily need to max out that power as long as you can have the time where the vehicle is sitting idle to allow that charge to happen. Obviously, the more power you go with, the more future-proofed it will be, and the quicker your EV will charge. So if there are circumstances where you'll want to get that battery back up to a higher percentage state of charge quickly, then more power is desirable, but you can certainly get away with that 30 to 40 amp kind of range and be very comfortable in most scenarios. Trade-off is usually price, and the more power you go, the more expensive the equipment is going to be, the more potential you'll need to upgrade panel, home electrics, all that kind of thing. So it's really a case of, if you're going to go with a slightly more complicated installation or a higher power potential, or you're considering that, then get an electrician in, get some kind of quotes for how much the work is going to be, and make a decision based on the price and what it's worth to you to have that extra power available. And on the subject of cost, how much is it going to cost to charge your electric vehicle when you're at home after you've selected all the hardware? Well, this is relatively easy to find out, and usually the answer is it's almost always cheaper to charge at home, but that will depend on the area and how much your utility charges for electric delivery and a bunch of other fees that often get loaded on top. Simplest way to do this is to go to your utility bill and look at what you are paying as your price per kilowatt hour. Again, note that there's a delivery fee and then other service fees topped on top, so you really want to get the final price per kilowatt hour that you're paying for electricity at home to understand how much it's going to cost there. But then also remember that some areas do have time of use programs, so you'll be able to potentially, if you have the certain utility, look at charging off-peak hours, whether that's overnight or at certain times during the day when the grid is less strained in your area. You can look at accessing a cheaper rate to charge your electric vehicle during those times with utilities that have those programs available. That also brings us on to potential cost savings through incentives and rebates. It's always worth checking your local utility and sustainability programs in your state, because there can be rebates on both electric vehicle supply equipment, EVSE, that's just your chargers and the hardware you use to charge at home, or the rates that you have from your utility. So there may be money back for installing home charging, for buying an EV, and we've broken this down on findthebestcarprice.com by state, so you can just take a look at all the incentives, both from purchasing the electric vehicle to all the post-purchase incentives that we're talking about here with home charging, off-peak charging rates, that kind of thing. So take a look at the link in the description if you want to look at that for your state and what options you have available. So one final note here is obviously there are circumstances where people cannot charge at home. For that, we're going to look at charging on the road. Now that obviously is not necessarily the case for someone who lives in an apartment or multifamily dwelling. You're actually at home but wanting to charge your EV. Similar logic applies to some of that, and the same tools you will need to be able to charge your EV if you do live in a place that doesn't have home charging or offer some kind of charging very close to where you live. That's all coming up in the next video. And a lot of the points that we'll make about how you charge when you're away from home will also be relevant to you if you are not able to charge in your driveway or at home where you live. So that covers many of the initial questions that people have about what they can do for home EV charging, how quickly it will go, what kind of equipment they will need, potential upgrades, and what kind of incentives you can get to make that charging a little bit cheaper potentially. And if you have further questions about home charging and how people manage the day-to-day charging requirements of an EV, then join our Facebook group EV101. You'll get a lot of questions on there and answers that will help you from people who've lived with EVs for many years. And up next we'll have how to charge your electric vehicle on the road.